Hello, welcome to The Olive Tree. I'm Julia Fisher, and today I'm in Tel Aviv talking to Leah, a social worker from America, to find out why she's in Israel working amongst drug addicts and prostitutes. After graduating, Leah spent some years in South Africa working in a township amongst very poor people. I started by asking her why.
I had a girlfriend that was living there at the time, and she found a very cheap ticket, and she knew I was a teacher, so she asked me to come and visit and help them start this school to look at some curriculum for her on vacation. So I said yes, of course, because I always wanted to visit her. And the month I was there, I just fell in love with this township and these kids, and there was no school. And I was doing all the work to pick a curriculum for them and help them design the classroom. And I started to think, but I could teach it. I didn't love my job in the States, and the school year was over. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. So I came home and in 2 months raised support and moved. On a Friday, I landed in South Africa, and school started that Monday. So it was a learning curve, and it took a year and a half till the school was legal officially in every way. And then I trained local girls and gave them some microloans to go to school themselves so they could continue on. And when I felt like I had my teacher replacement, I left and had people in place to help with the admin. But my favorite part of South Africa was walking my kids home and meeting their moms. And that's what really opened my heart to trauma and abuse. Every one of my mothers had been raped, and I didn't know how to process that as a believer. I felt there had to be something more I could do besides pray for them. So that's kind of what started walking me down this journey of working with psychology and spirituality and blending them. I think God gives us our minds to heal us.
So you found yourself in an immensely difficult situation, challenging situation, and what was one woman going to do about it?
Yeah, I had no idea what to do. I felt like just praying and reading my Bible with them wasn't sufficient. So I was part of a team, but my team didn't want anything to do with this and had no clue themselves. So I just was Googling and asking friends back home, what would you say? What would you do? And I, started very much on my own, creating support groups and things that now I continue that I just did intuitively. But yeah, it was very difficult, but also I loved them, and they changed my life. They were so happy despite what had happened, but yet they had these gaping wounds that were just bleeding out, and they were so happy. And they were really, it was very hard. Also balancing that with teaching full time and trying to start a school is also challenging in its own way. So it was a very stretching time, but also really wonderful.
You're clearly a pioneer, somebody who goes into a difficult situation and makes a difference. So South Africa, working with the townships, children, their mothers. Now you're here working amongst drug addicts, the homeless, here in Israel. How come?
A few years ago, 5 years ago, I was invited to come for 3 months and help start a shelter here for prostitutes in Tel Aviv. Until 2 months ago, prostitution was legal in Israel. And especially in the Tel Aviv society as a whole, it's not looked down upon. It's actually seen as a good employment. So there's not a lot of help. They're literally it's just this shelter and one other that are doing anything for these women. So I came and I thought, that's it. I'm just going to come these 3 months. I'm going to train the staff how to do good social work, and then I'm going to leave. And I just fell in love with the women here and the staff and the women coming. And I wanted to continue to help more and volunteer and see this shelter grow and be a healthy, sustaining place of life in this community. So that's kind of the short version of how I got here. And then I've done various things in the meantime, but that's always been the anchor. And what is still the favorite part of my job here is being in the shelter with the girls.
Can you tell me some of the stories? Where do they come from typically?
Right now, we are 75% Israeli born and raised. They consider themselves self-employed. We do have girls that belong to a brothel, and they have to make a quota. The largest percentage then, of course, would be Eastern European girls. We have a lot of Moldovans and a lot of Ukrainian girls. We have some East Africans. We have some Spanish and Italian girls. But those would be, it's mostly the Eastern European and then Israel. And a lot of them just literally have, childhood sexual abuse trauma, and they didn't have good support systems, and that, they were very vulnerable, and then they were presented an opportunity, and prostitution, like I said, was legal till a few months ago. So they kind of did walk into this, and now they're stuck, of course, in it. Some of the stories, they're so sweet. They're like little girls. They're older. Our youngest is 24. Our oldest is 69. But they're emotionally like little girls. So a couple weeks ago, we had a birthday for one of them, and she's in her 40s. And so we gave her like little hair ribbons like you do for like a 5-year-old. And we sang for her, and we painted her nails extra special, and she just was laughing and crying, and they've just never experienced love. And that's our heart, is we just want to love them where they're at. But that was like a recent highlight because, her face was just gold, and we love to love them.
Does drug addiction come into this prostitution scene?
Yeah, so that's one thing as a staff we're really praying and trying to seek out, what comes first, or what's the bigger issue holding them back right now. Is it drug abuse or alcohol, or is it this addiction? And we don't know the answer. In my opinion, it's all bad that the Lord wants to touch and heal and redeem. But that's a big, also in a broad scale with social science when you're working with this population. But I'd say of our girls, 95% are addicted to something that they use to numb the pain. But to continue using that, they need to continue in their prostitution so they can have money, so they can pay for this. So it's this cycle that doesn't end. But it's a huge issue.
A huge issue, a big social problem. You say now prostitution has become illegal here in Israel. So what are they doing?
We don't know, and nothing has changed yet. So we'll see. It literally was 2 months ago. We don't know what they will do. Supposedly, it was the best case scenario for people like myself, this law that they passed, because it came with all these caveats of actually rehabilitation and support and the rehab facilities. It's a really fantastic law, but it's yet to be implemented, and nobody knows when, if it will. There's a lot that's being talked about. So I actually don't know. We're all waiting.
So here you are, you're trying to build a team of people specializing in providing this sort of help and support. You must feel like you're trying to push water uphill, really. The problem is so immense. What keeps you here? What sort of a difference do you really believe you can make?
We see change. And so I think that if that wasn't the case, it would be really a lot more difficult. The biggest thing for me is I know what God has done in my life. And I come from a past of abuse. And I know how low I felt. And I know how much I love life and how God has just completely restored what the locust ate. And that's what drives me, because I know it inside of me. I know it's possible. And and we see usually we have about 1 to 3 women a month that we help get out. We have a safe house in the north. This year we baptized 6 of our girls. We have a discipleship program. They are changing, and it is slow, and it's not a fast process, but they do really change. And even in small ways that they know, they reach for a hug instead of shrinking away when we go to hug them. And that's a victory. And I'm not a sprinter. I like to run marathons. So that keeps me going.
In other words, you're helping an individual who's then helping another individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me especially, because my Hebrew is not quite fluent, and so I feel very called to use these degrees I have to equip my Israeli staff, because they intuitively know this culture and these girls. And if I can help them to help them better, that's for me the ideal. I love that. But then also with the women, it's such an example. And when our girls see someone who's left that's doing well, it gives them hope that they also could do well when they leave. So yeah, on both levels for me, I love that.
You're here, you're immersing yourself in the culture, you're understanding what's going on in society here in Israel. And many people come here and think, oh, it's the Holy Land, but actually there's a lot of deep problems here. It's far from holy. You're trying to make a difference in such a difficult area. If I was to ask you, what do you see as being the bigger picture? What's really on your heart? What are you hoping for? What do you believe God is doing here in all this?
I mean, he's building his kingdom. It's what he said. That's, he's going to build his kingdom, and his light, there's no darkness so dark that his light isn't greater still. So I don't know. I work in very dark places, very dirty places, and I just see God bringing hope in them. So it's hard for me to say in like a bigger Israel picture, because I am involved in church work and I help with this youth group where we just baptized some of our kids a few weeks ago. So I see the church also growing, but for me, I just, that's God's promise for his glory, and he's doing it. And I love and feel so amazed and humbled to be part of it. I love seeing that transformation.
You've been listening to Leah, somebody who is turning her unhappy experiences of life to help others. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work through our bi-monthly newsletter, including news about our upcoming tours, please either visit our website www.olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, OTRF, PO Box 402, Billingshurst, RH14 4BQ in the UK. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.